You are listening to Know You're Crazy. My name is Susan Denee. We all have crazy. What separates us is how we choose to deal with it. I'm going to be delivering engaging and actionable tools to own your crazy, treat your crazy, and turn it into your own superpower. I hope that you walk away from this show feeling the power and strength within you. And never forget to enjoy your journey because you are worth it. Everyone, welcome to the Know You're Crazy show. My name is Susan Denee, and you are listening to Emotional Recovery in the Raw. And today's show is going to be all about staying in the ring when your other person, partner, friend, whoever, acquaintance of yours, has glaring defects that are almost too hard to bear and make it challenging for you to own your own behavior in the middle of the storm. It's a subtle creep into relationships that go wrong. My husband and I, who work with couples, most of them in recovery, some not, were recently discussing the challenge it can be to stay in the ring when it gets uncomfortable. A lot of times when there's fear that enters the relationship, one of the partners goes off base. Because you're two people in a relationship, and as much as the relationship will grow at a steady pace, the individuals within that relationship will have their own pace at which they grow. For example, I would have fears in my relationship with my husband that were triggered in the beginning of our relationship, and it dealt around jealousy. What if he likes somebody else more than me? What's he doing in his time when I'm home with my kids? There were these fears that at times would consume me. He didn't have the same fears. His fears came later on in our relationship when he had to learn how to navigate his own experience when I was traveling a lot professionally. Different fears can get triggered in the relationships at different times, depending on what the both of you have in front of you and what is going on. How could they not? Each person's having their own experience. If you've been listening to the show for a while, you have heard me say, how can we expect our partner, our friends, our acquaintances, maybe our mentees, our bosses, our coworkers, to absolutely see things the way we see things when we are all having our own experience during the day? If I come out of my house and I take a left turn and I go down the street out of the neighborhood, I might notice the trees, I might notice the cute little squirrels, or I might be somebody who comes out of the same house, takes a left turn, goes down the street, and suddenly I'm seeing somebody who didn't park their car in the right spot, somebody who left their sprinkler on, maybe I see somebody walking their dog, but what attracts our perception is unique to each and every one of us. Those of us who have been in relationships for a long time, and I'm not talking just intimate relationships, I'm talking long-term friendships, child-parent relationships. Some folks lose that relationship, believe it or not, because of being stuck on a way of thinking that we need to see things absolutely the same. Here's the deal. We're going to have different experiences. We're supposed to. We came into this world as individuals. We will leave as individuals. And while we're here having this tremendous experience as individuals and couples and friends, and we're all trying to connect, why not give it our best shot? But when we get into our own fear, sometimes it is extremely challenging to do that. So today's show, I am talking about how to stay in the ring, how to stay positive, but also how to own your own behavior when it feels like the other person in your life, whoever that may be, has glaring character flaws, in your opinion, that have just absolutely consumed you. And now there seems to be nowhere to turn, no way to overcome it. And now it's become a blame game, and you find yourself venting about it, and you find yourself having imaginary conversations with the person that you're winning. One of my favorite go-tos for when I know I'm dealing with a little bit of crazy. That's why the show is called Know You're Crazy, because it triggers each of us differently. And what am I talking about crazy? I'm talking about when we're full of fear, we're full of anxiety, we're full of confusion, we feel emotional, Maybe we want to rant. Maybe we want to turn inward and blame ourselves and go into the deep, dark tunnel of isolation. All kinds of different things that can trigger and really be defined as our individual crazy. You've heard me talk about this topic a lot on the show as far as the symptoms of everybody's individual crazy. I in no way mean that as in a demeaning way. In fact, I have this beautiful quote that I printed out that says, "We need to dare to be sane, to take on our craziness unabashedly and hold it with compassion, to face it, name it, and in doing so, be bigger than it, no longer caught by it, and therefore intimately in touch with our wholeness, not only sane, but saner than sane." That is by John Kabat-Zinn, American professor of medicine and creator of stress reduction. You may have heard of him. Where do I begin today? I'm going to begin with 3 different topics. Now, in the world of recovery, if you're listening to this and you're somebody who's sober and you've been in the rooms of recovery, then you're going to recognize these terms: obsession, illusion, and delusion. And how do they show up in our life based on our mental and emotional game will absolutely impact our relationships. And so today I'm going to be focusing on the obsession, the illusion, and the delusion that we can fall under when we are in partnership with somebody who, in our opinion, is not doing it the way we think they should do it, and therefore we are feeling discomfort. All right? So that's what's up for today. How do we stay in the ring? How do we own our own behavior? And the subtlety that it will require for us to own our own behavior no matter what our partner is doing. For those of you joining me today, if you are looking for coaching, especially for couples or individuals, I suppose anybody, feel free to reach out to me at my website. You can also email me at growthspurt@SusanDenee. I'd be more than happy to take you through a free complimentary session with you to find out if there's something that I can offer you that will help you in your relationship building or your individual goal setting for whatever that you want to have for your future in the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months. If you've never worked with a coach or anybody who has helped guide you through some fantastic questioning so that you can find a place of just excitement, joy, fulfillment for what's going to be coming into your future in the next year or so, or however far you want to go out, I highly suggest it. It's a powerful, powerful method that can be used with you. And it's a wonderful experience. So if that's anything that interests you, feel free to reach out to me at growthspurt@SusanDenee. I would love to be of service. Now, having said that, let's jump in. Okay, first, I'm just going to start everything that I talk about in relationships. Now, yes, I've done a ton of individual work and study about relationships, inner development, self-development, all of that over the years. I mean, that's a thing. Spiritual development has been part of my story. If it's not for you, that's okay. But I will say, me understanding that something greater is in control of this has done nothing but benefit me in my life. And I do advocate that for anybody, no matter what that belief is. So having said all of that, I like to be completely transparent because my experience with this particular topic really comes down to my own intimate relationships. And when I say intimate, I don't only mean with my husband or even my ex-husband, but also my children and women that I have mentored in my life and sponsored in the program of recovery. So a lot of this is just, some of it's just raw data that I've compiled over the years that has really assisted me. And a lot of great talks with my current husband, Joe, as we have navigated our own relationship, blended family, 5 children, both of us in recovery from alcoholism and addiction, which means that our lives are impacted continuously from alcoholism and addiction. We've had children suffer from it. We've had ex-spouses suffer from it. We watch our children navigate those waters now that they've been raised in a sober home, which I would love to say, hey, when you've got a sober home, you may not deal with this. Yeah, not really. You know, addiction can run in all kinds of different forms, faces. Mental illness can accompany it. So as a couple, we have learned to navigate these waters and yet individually grow and grow as a couple. And it hasn't been pretty all the time. I mean, I'm not one of those people that's going to sit up here and tell you, oh, we've had fantastic communication and we've just been in love. No, we've had some nasty ass arguments. We've had, some real, brutal things said to each other, because what I have found when a partner in the relationship is in extreme fear doesn't hear frothy emotional appeal. Yes, I got that from the rooms, but it's such a good line. fear usually takes a little bit of gut punch sometimes. And so we've had that. And I'm not advocating that that's what you need to do. But I will say that it's important in a relationship to be heard. It's important to be heard. And sometimes that direct delivery of the message is necessary if one of the partners is consumed in fear or obstinance or whatever it is. So I want to go too far off on that tangent because I'm going to be covering a lot of that today. Because the idea is to stay in the ring. I'm not advocating everybody to go have yelling fights with one another, but what I'm advocating is boldness. What I'm advocating is being willing to have those difficult conversations with whoever in your life, because we will refrain from it for fear of upsetting, fear of doing it wrong. A lot of us still suffer from that perfectionist attitude. We're playing the conversation out, 4 sentences, wondering if I say this, what are they doing? We're trying to do this imaginary chess game with somebody, hoping that our words are going to land a certain way, so therefore they can have a certain change in their life, and therefore I'll feel better. All of that is manipulation. All of it is. God, I'm on fire about this topic today. I think we've been talking about it for a little bit. Recently has come up, and it's powerful when you come through the other side. And that's why I wanted to talk about it today. It's just so powerful when you come through the other side of a challenging moment in a relationship and you show up differently, but you have your aha moments and you change and you begin to look at your partner and your friends or whoever it is that you're having challenges with in a brand new way, because you experience a shift in perception. Have you ever had a shift in perception that feels like a spiritual experience? I think they all are spiritual experiences. When I have uprooted a belief that has held me hostage to a toxic situation, and that toxic situation is usually just a thinking between my ears, gosh, there's so much relief in that. There's so much relief in that. So if you're tuning in today, stay tuned because I'm going to get started. Like I said, I'm very passionate about this. Hopefully this goes as well as I think it will. All right, obsession, illusion, and delusion. What am I talking about? In a relationship, sometimes one of the partners are going to behave in a way that is really bothersome. And it can be anything as brutal verbal delivery to overly concerned about how everything's done in the house. Okay. So perhaps it's poor communication. I used to like to say to my husband a long time ago, your delivery sucks. Your delivery sucks. He would own it. Took a little bit for us to get through that, but that was one of the things we had to overcome. Some folks will suffer from one person really obsessed how things are in the house. Like, this goes in this box because of this. And if you don't color in this way, then I'm going to have a problem with that. And I may not, I'm going to try to check it. I'm going to act like I'm being okay, but my intentions are always going to be to change how you do things in the house. And if you don't change how things are done in the house, maybe I'm going to get strategic about my timing of that, but I'm really going to bring it up to you at some point, because I noticed you put the fork in the knife drawer, and that's not where it goes. Okay, that's not where it goes. You guys hearing me? We all come with our own mixed bag of tricks. When it comes to living with us or being in friendships with us, we will place silent expectations on individuals. We will define, I love this one. We will define a characteristic. We will assign it to somebody. Do you have people in your life where you have assigned them their personality because based on your own assumptions, based on you living in the past of what you saw yesterday and having an inability to see them in a new way? Is this person grinding on you on a regular basis? Have you become obsessed with their behavior? Are you unable to set it down? Do you constantly think about it? Do you drug? Gosh, I've been obviously talking about alcoholism. Do you dread being around them again because you've already started to assume that the behavior is going to be present? When we suffer from obsession in any type of relationship, when we are already expecting disappointment, when we have already assigned a behavior to somebody and not given them benefit of the doubt for today in this moment, we are doing a disservice to the relationship. This can become very challenging for individuals when they are in a relationship with somebody who I like to say has loud defects. Loud defects. Because when the other person has loud defects, the person whose defects might be a little bit quieter. And I just got to say, for anybody who has a problem with the defects, just filter it in your own way so you feel better about it. Just recently, I've been hearing like, well, I don't like to think I have defects. Like, that's fine. That's fine. I'm not judging you. I'm just saying I'm going to use the word defects. You got to be okay with this, all right? Or you don't have to be okay with it, but that's what I'm going to use. Okay. When this person with the silenter defects, maybe the more gentle defects, is around somebody with the louder defects, the silent one can really almost come off as not such a problem, right? And the silent one is actually the one that is more challenging to discover what they're doing in the relationship that's not satisfying to them. It's kind of like in the world of recovery, you have an Alcoholics Anonymous program, and then you have an Al-Anon program for those who have been affected by the disease of alcoholism and addiction. So an Al-Anon program might be people who go to that, who are like children, might have Alateen, spouses, things like that. I don't know how many people I have spoken to in recovery that will have a challenge with somebody in the disease of alcoholism, sober or not, okay? Be either one. And I recommend Al-Anon. 99% of the time, what's happening is they think, well, this isn't my problem, it's theirs. They're the one that's doing X, Y, and Z. They're the one that's bringing this terrible behavior. Why should I have to go do this? The answer to that is because whether we like it or not, when we are affected by somebody's behavior, the only reason we are affected is because it is triggering something within us that we are uncomfortable with. And until we get to the center of that, this other person's behavior will continue to be obsession for us, and we will continue to show up in the same way. Yeah, it's true. The change is always going to be within you and not them. Oh, and it can be challenging. Trust me, been there. In my worst times of my behavior, my worst times, I was a blamer. It was all you. It had nothing to do with me. If only you would behave differently, I would be at peace. I was that person. And so I was the angry victim. And so I couldn't deal with that idea. I couldn't deal with the idea that I would have to go to my own recovery or my own type of healing based on somebody else's decisions or somebody else's actions. I could never believe that. And so it can be very subtle. So if you're dealing with a partner who has out loud defects and you've been navigating and twisting and turning and manipulating your words and addressing it in a certain way and withholding your true self for fear of maybe their defect, maybe they like to argue, maybe you're no good at arguing, so you've learned to go within. There's always a part in all of this for all of us. And if you are the out loud pusher and you're unaware or you're not being cognizant of how your behavior is affecting others, but yet the relationship continues to be in turmoil and you continue to respond and react in these same ways, then that's kind of where this is going to go for you. Because what will happen is that the obsession will happen with that individual also. If you've been listening to me for a while, I talk a lot about the bulldozer and the doormat. Okay, that's two extreme personality types. We tend to express our stress in one or the other. We're either going to go way inward or we're going to go way outward. So on the way outward person, the obsession will be the other person just needs to do something different. They're not making me happy no more, right? So they're suffering from the same obsession as the one who's withholding. So everybody's obsessed. And when you're in it, I like to say, when we're in it, we're in it. We have a challenging time stepping away from our perception and understanding that we are having an experience. And until we get to our own individual work, we're going to continue to have that experience. So number one, do you have a relationship where you have been absolutely obsessed with somebody's behavior? And really ask yourself this question with full attention. Take some time and ask yourself, because sometimes it might be an in-law, it might be a sister, an adult, it could be anybody, but you are consistently asking yourself or judging them for being who they are because they consistently disappoint you. Yeah, disappointment. was kind of funny. Recently, I've talked about disappointment on the show before, and I had one of these lovely note cards, and I'm reading a new book, and I was in my office. I just I don't know, sitting on my thing. I grabbed the card, I threw it in my book. Well, I'm horrible with bookmarks because I'm always bookmarking and I'm underlining. So, anyways, it's traveling with me, and my husband and I are camping, and he says to me, he holds up the disappointment card, and he goes, "Oh my God, what is with this disappointment card? I keep finding it." And so it was making him like look at himself every time, like, where am I disappointed? What am I disappointed in? And I started laughing. I said, it's not directed at all. It was a bookmark. I just happened to put it in my book. But if you are somebody who suffers with disappointment of others often, how many times are you looking at your partner with disappointment instead of looking at their greatness? When you get out of balance with that, you're stuck on something, you're obsessed with something about them. When there's a person in your life that you just can't quite let go because the repeated thing is continuing to occur, and either you haven't let go of the relationship for whatever reason, you continue to show up, but yet you continue to expect them to change. I just have to let you know that you can always, and we'll get into more and more of this, there's always a way to communicate all of that. But at the end of the day, it's going to be up to you to address your disappointment and where it's coming from and why it is so important. Here's the next one. To realize that you're in an illusion. And the illusion in the relationship is, if only you would change your behavior, I would be happy. If only you would show up the way I want you to show up, I would be happy. I recently had somebody place an expectation on me that wanted me to do something one particular day that I thought I did really well at, but they didn't. They had a whole other story that they thought I should show up in a different way. I showed up to what I was very comfortable with, but this ended up being like kind of like a breakup. And so it was what it was. But there was an illusion that somehow if I behaved in a different way, this other person would feel better. And I'm not that powerful. These people in your life that you're expecting them to behave a different way so that you feel better about you, I just got to give you a little insight on this. The only person that can make you feel better about you is you. That's it. And one of the high performance habits that we talk about in coaching is courage. And I think about that a lot because it takes a lot of courage to learn how to communicate. I mean, how many people have you seen attempt? Well, okay, let's just talk about social media. I mean, it's huge, right? Because everybody has a way to express themselves. They're able to communicate. And then we see what happens when communication goes wrong and it goes in the wrong way. And people are using social media as a way to vent and do all these, things. Everybody's unhappy. And like, oh my God, I can't believe we're doing it. Right. Well, there's an illusion sometimes that if everybody would just communicate a certain way, or you would do this way, I would feel better. But it takes courage to get there. It takes courage to express what you want and what you need. And I'm going to talk about that in just 2 seconds. But the illusion is that the other person needs to change in order for you to be okay. That doesn't mean, and I always make an exception to this, if you're like in an abusive relationship or you're in something, something really toxic, this is not for you. I'm talking about in that relationship, I suggest you get some professional help. I'm talking about the relationship so that we are in a relationship. There is no abuse, but there's a lot of character assassination silently going on between your ears. There's a lot of expectation. There's a lot of disappointment. There might even be a lot of yelling, a lot of nagging, and just a lot of stuff going on underneath the roof, right? A lot of stuff going on underneath the roof. Or in your friendships, maybe this is an ongoing relationship with somebody and you haven't truly told them what you think or feel because of whatever. You got your own belief system, but you're constantly ruminating about the fact that they won't change and how they're not doing it for you anymore because you're constantly making them accountable for your happiness. So there is an illusion that this other person needs to change in order for me to be happy. And I'm sorry to tell you that the only person that's going to really bring peace to you is you. And getting to that level of happiness and that level of fulfillment does take courage because it's going to take some communication. It's going to take what feels like an emotional risk in doing that communication, right? All right, we got obsession, we got illusion, and we got delusion. I'm right. I'm right. I'm right because I think if you really changed, I really would be happy. And your character flaws are so annoying. I can't even believe you don't even know about it. Like, I can't even believe you continue to be like this. Like, I keep telling myself I'm not going to get shocked, but I do get shocked because you show up and you act like this. And I'm right. Like I know in my heart of hearts, I'm right. Like I know I'm not crazy here, but I'm right. 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 Are you? Are you sure that's true? Are you 100% sure you're right about whatever that's keeping you unsatisfied in the relationship or in a state of obsession or in a state of delusion? If you're in a relationship that continues to bring this up for you, are you sure you're right? Because that can be a big delusion. There can be a lot of stuff going on there. And like I said, the exception to this is if it's a physically, mentally, emotionally abusive relationship. Then I would just suggest professional therapy. But I'm talking, you know what I'm talking about? I'm talking about those relationships where we think we're right, we think we have the better way. If only the other person would shift, this whole thing would get better. Okay? We got obsession, we got illusion, and we got delusion. So what do you do? Thinking, okay, how do I get to the most rewarding and freeing part of this? And that is, folks, you have to own your behavior. You have to stay on your side of the street. In fact, that's the name of the show. Learning to stay on your side of the street in the middle of the turmoil. Learning to take your own inventory and not somebody else's. But yet, also, part of that is sitting in the discomfort long enough to allow a shift to occur, not bugging the hell out of your folks, not annoying them with, all the stuff, sitting in the discomfort and learning to own your own behavior. How do you get there? For me, I had to really humble myself and take a good look at myself. I told you at the beginning of the show that some of my experience in this category and my husband's experience, who I have his permission to talk about on this show, really came from our own navigating our relationship. Because, I like to say we are both, we can really go there, and just the passion, and yet we're both very willing individuals to look at ourselves. So like neither one of us gets away with some obnoxious behavior for very long, because individually we convict ourselves anyway, because it's not the person that we want to be or show up in a relationship. But even as a couple, neither one of us want a relationship. We want a relationship that's fulfilling and satisfying, loving, and all that good stuff. But how do you own your behavior, especially when the other partner, you're pretty sure their defects are glaring? There's a couple different words that I could use that will help define a behavior. One can be controlling. That might seem like a really common word that people use, and there could be a lot of meaning behind it for different people, and they bring up stuff. But what I'm saying is, do things always need to go your way? Do you ask your partner for what they prefer? And when you ask them, does it ever go their way, or is it always going your way? Just ask yourself that, because control to a fault could be showing up. Are you meeting 50-50 with your partner or with your friend or with your, whatever? Are you pulling your side of the way? So that's the one thing, am I showing up? Another word that comes up for me is manipulation. How do I manipulate my communication? Am I open when my feelings are hurt, or am I withholding? Some people think I'm an honest person, but in their relationships, they're not honest. They've got these expectations, or they have these ideas about the other person that they're not sharing consistently. And then they continually wake up disappointed. And that's the part that can take a lot of courage. And so we have to work on that. We have to work on our wording, and we have to work on our scripting. And I've done shows about this in the past, about sometimes it's literally as simple as sitting down and writing out something that you want to say to your partner. Blaming. Whatever the relationship is in your life that's gone a little bit crazy, are you in a state of blaming them consistently and still obsessing about it, that it needs to happen? Are you a blamer? Are you blaming? The subtlety with which we can't see our side of the street, it's really quite impressive fear and the level of denial that we can be in. And I talk from personal experience. I can't remember if I shared the story or not, but my mom recently passed away. She passed away a few months back. And my mom was the alcoholic growing up. She later got sober when I was about 19 or 20. I didn't get sober till I was about 26. So about 6 years later, I got sober. And she had wrote me a letter when I was still, as we would say in the recovery, in my cups. I wasn't sober yet. I was, still angry, still resentful, still blaming the world for everything and everybody's behaviors, the glaring behaviors, mom's drinking was glaring. I had a lot to say about it as a kid. I felt a lot about it as a kid. I'm not diminishing my feelings of growing up in that environment, especially for anybody who's in it right now. But what I am saying is I was just in my own experience with it. And she wrote me a letter, and I was probably about 25 when she wrote it. I hadn't gotten sober yet. And I had read the whole letter. It had been opened. I had read it. I think she might have been about 60 at the time. This letter, miraculously, made it to me a few months back. And it had been over my ex-husband's house, and somehow he'd been going through some things, and my daughter brought it over to me. He said, Dad wanted you to have this box of stuff. It's cards and letters, all these things. So I'm going through it. I find this letter. Now, my mom, in the meantime, is in a nursing home and about ready, she's pretty ill, and she's kind of going through her stages. And I open up this letter and I read it now as a almost 50-year-old woman who is 23 years clean and sober, and had a life full of experiences. And as I read that letter, I saw my mom, I already cherished my mom. I'd already healed that relationship for me. My mom never had to change anything. In fact, her sobriety didn't look anything like my sobriety. She did it different. And I didn't have to judge that. I didn't have to criticize that over my life. Like, I came to complete peace with that relationship. And yet when I read this letter that she had wrote to me when she was 60, she's now, 83 when she passed. I got to see my mom for the courageous woman that she was as she navigated her own reason for getting sober and her own story and what she went through. She had told me when I was 25, but when I was 25, I was so angry and I was so blinded by my victim and everything that had been done to me. I couldn't see the letter. I was so blinded by it. I couldn't see the letter. I couldn't appreciate the story she was telling me. And when I read this letter, there was no victim in the letter. This wasn't like her projecting. I mean, she was literally telling, like, God must have been with her that day. It was a complete detachment of love when she wrote me that letter telling me her story. And to me, I believe the universe gave that to me right when I needed it, 2 months before she passed, to when I sat next to her on that bed and I was able to say thank you. She knew. I was saying thank you for everything, because now I know. Now I know exactly what you went through, even though you told me when I was 25. I couldn't see it. In your relationship, the reason I tell you that story is because denial can be super thick and it can be super strong, and you don't always see it happening and you don't always feel it's happening, and you are convinced that something is not your fault, or you are convinced that you did everything right? You're convinced of it, and yet you can't come to terms with the relationship, and you can't come within peace of the relationship. And if that is happening to you, then I just want to let you know there is something there for you to see. There is something there for you to be discovered, because there's more awakening in store for you if you have that going on. And so when we are in a relationship with whoever for whatever reason, and we're wondering, how do I stay in the relationship when their character flaws or their character defects are so glaring or so misaligned with who I am as an individual? How do I stay? Number one, do you want to stay? For today, are you going to stay? And if the answer to that is yes, I'm not packing my bags, I'm not leaving the friendship, I'm not going to call and break up with them today. If that's the decision today, then guess what? There's plenty of hope for you, because there's more discovery to be had. Just drop the fight or flight, because if it's not happening, it ain't happening. Okay, just get over it and just make a decision today that I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start to discover what about me needs to shift to stay in the ring. Long time ago, my husband, my current husband, had said to me, I think he said to me, or maybe somebody recommended it, I honestly can't remember, mentioned the idea of him and I going into marital therapy. I do not discount marital therapy. In fact, I have gone into lots of therapy in my life. So I just want to make sure I put that little caveat out there. But what I said to him that day was at this particular journey in our life, in my world of awareness and awakening and looking within myself, if I still need therapy because I don't know how to communicate, then I think that's on me and not on us. And I didn't want to go into marital therapy because I thought, you know what, with all the stuff out there that I've done, with all the awareness, and I'm in recovery, so we got 12 steps and we got outside resource, if I still have to depend on marital therapy for me to learn how to communicate, then I've got something that I'm not addressing within me, and it has nothing to do with my husband, and there's no reason for me to drag him through that. Really, that was my thought. Now, at that point in my life, I had done a lot of work. I was very aware, but I had my own boundary with myself. And the reason I share that with you is because sometimes I think in intimate relationships, everybody wants to go to therapy and talk about it, but nobody wants to own their part. Yeah. If somehow if we just talk about it more, we will, you'll fix you. A lot of people go into marital therapy thinking the other person needs fixed. Yeah. It's usually, and that may not be your story. You may really need it, right? But a lot of times somebody thinks the other person needs fixed. And really it's both people probably need to do a little bit of work, and they can do that as individuals if they like. It's one of the reasons why I like doing couple coaching versus couple therapy. And if I think it's a couple really does need something like therapy, usually I'll be hinting towards something that's just beyond my skill set, or somebody can't hear anything, or they're unable to vision the future in the goal setting. Once we work out like the baseline stuff of agreements and some 101 communication and new habit building within the relationship, like that's some of the base work that we'll do in coaching. And then we get to set future goals, and we get to start taking a look at what would you like to create as a couple together, and they start coming together as a team. If we're unable to get towards like that little base of just agreements, because even with coaching, some couples will come in and they're just kind of off base. They've been disagreeing for a while, so as a coach, I kind of like try to get them on the same page again to remind them of their greatness so that they can move forward. But there are agreements, there are assumptions, like there's different things we go through to get that worked out. That in that baseline, if that can't get worked out, or if they keep retreading, I guess, the same behavior, the relationship behaviors, I like to say, not the individual behaviors, but as a couple, if they keep repeating the same behaviors as a couple, and there's no gain in it for them, that might be something for therapy, even maybe individual, and then they come back. I don't know. This kind of goes beyond, but I'm aware of my own skill set, and I'm aware of when I'm tapped out, like tap out. This is where, I can see two individuals can't get to the coaching side of it. And I just think that's important to say, the difference between the two. But there's always your part. And that's really what I want to drill home today is there's always your part within the relationship. And if you can find that part, and because it only takes one of you to shift. If some of you have been in a relationship for a while, and like let's say somebody quits smoking, or no, so one of you starts eating better. And then suddenly the other one's kind of like, oh, I think I might eat better. Can I have some of that chicken? It takes one to shift. And when the one shifts and they are completely fulfilled, just watch what happens. The other partner will usually get on board, because isn't it attractive when somebody starts to shift? Isn't it attractive when somebody owns their own behavior? Isn't that attractive? It is so attractive. So if you're in it right now in a relationship, I am here to say, what does my husband, I wish I could remember the line he came up with. It is so fantastic, but something about, have grace for the pace. Have grace for the pace of the relationship. This too shall shift for you if you're individually willing to do the work and then come together as a couple. This can change for you. All right, so I'm going to wrap it up. All right, but as a reminder, number one, the heck am I? Okay. Are you suffering from obsession? Are you repeatedly obsessed about somebody's behavior in your life? And because of that, you are telling yourself you have an illusion that if only they would change, I would be better. Is this a story that's going on for you right now? Could be your kids. How many times we obsessed about kids? If only they do their homework, I'd feel better. Because ultimately, really comes down to us as parents. We're fearful. If they don't do something, they're going to end up out on the streets and living. Oh my God, they're going to be homeless. They're not going to make, $1 million a year. What are they? It's all about you, mom and dad. It's all about you. I'm not saying you don't have a role to help them, be successful, but you don't get that. Delusion. I'm right. You got obsession, illusion, or delusion coming up in the relationship. I'm right. If you'd only change, I'd be better. I can't stop freaking thinking about it. So I've got these 3 things going on. What do I do about it? Number 1, you got to find out how to own your own behavior. You got to find out, what am I contributing to this relationship that's becoming toxic? Because I'm the only one that's in control of my behavior. I'm the only one that can shift. I can't expect anybody else to change to make me feel better. I'm absolutely going to own it. And for those of you who do have a spiritual practice, that's between you and your God. You and your higher power, whatever you want to call it, your higher self, your inner source self, whatever it is, but that's between you and you. You and them, you and the higher power, okay? Changing somebody else is absolutely impossible. We can only change ourselves. But once that energy becomes supercharged and fulfilled and all of the above, it's amazing how that will impact the relationships in our life, right? Learn to sit in your discomfort. Sit in it. Nothing needs fixed right now. If something's gone haywire, and it's been haywire, but you're seeing that both of you are willing to do something about it, it's going to get uncomfortable before it doesn't. Learn to sit in that without having to nag, fix, overtalk, overburden, overtext, ask 20 million questions. Just sit in the discomfort. As my husband said, this message was given to him a long time ago, not in our marriage. Somebody once told him, just leave that poor woman alone. Just stop it. Stop bugging her. Stop, let her be. Let her be. Just sit. Learn to sit. Let her be, right? Sometimes we got to do that. All right. I think what I'm going to wrap up is happiness doesn't just land on us. It's earned. And from my own spiritual toolbox, I will say that my energy to stay in a great space takes some effort. I have to be accountable to pulling myself out of depressed moments. I have to become accountable to pulling myself out of bored moments. I have to be accountable to remain excited when I want to be excited. And I have to be accountable to allow myself to feel without taking hostages along with me when I feel. And when I feel, I'm talking about the negative emotions. I'm talking about the disappointment, the anger, the blame, the righteousness that can kick in. People don't deserve to have to go down that road with me. They just don't. When I'm in fear, I get to own my fear. And I think that once we learn to do that, our relationships absolutely flourish and they become beautiful and exciting and joyful. And that's why I do shows like this, is to remind you, if you're in it, there is hope for you. But you have to start with you. You have to start with you. And start seeing the people in your life that you're super disappointed in. Start seeing them as God would see them. Start looking at them like God looks at them, because God ain't looking down on them or looking at them, or inner source isn't judging them for who they are. They are seeing all the goodness. Sometimes I like to look at somebody who's really challenging for me, like a little 2-year-old running around, like a little, there's a couple people in my life that have red hair. I think little redhead 2-year-old running around. But it makes me feel joyful and it makes me chuckle a little bit because they take the seriousness out of it. Don't take this stuff so seriously all the time. Everybody's having their journey. They're meant to have it. For whatever reason, you're meant to be in that person's life when you're meant to be in that person's life. And so we just do the best we can as we navigate, and we learn to kind of let go of the resistance and become joyful and satisfied in all that we do. All right, so that's why we do it. That's why we do it. So having said that, thank you for joining me this 4th Wednesday of the month. I absolutely love being here. Reach out to me if you're looking for any of that couple coaching, or if you think that sounds like something you and your partner would be interested in. I would love to be of service. You can email me at growthspurt@SusanDenee, or message me on Facebook, whatever, Instagram. I would love to connect with you. So having said that, have a fantastic, fantastic evening. It's been great. Take care, and be gentle with everyone in your life. Bye-bye. You have been listening to No, You're Crazy.
Crazy.
And my name is Susan Denee. We are identifying, understanding, and treating your crazy one episode at a time. Tune in to transformationtalkradio.com. To connect with me or Growth Spurt Your Life, please visit SusanDenee.com. That's Susan Denee, DENEE.com.